I still have that video of myself recording me saying like, hey Majo, you are going to be the best child psychologist there is. I saw that and I was like looking at myself in the video and saying to that girl, like, we actually did it. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're seeing the title of this video, I am beyond excited for what's coming. In exactly 2.5 months, I'll be starting my doctorate in educational psychology in London. So if you've been following, you'll know that this is literally a dream come true. I have been talking about educational psychology and wanting to be an educational psychologist for like 1.5 years now. And to my friends back home, I have been talking about it for like 3 years, and it's insane that now it's actually happening. But it hasn't come without its challenges, and it's still a challenge in itself to figure out how my life will look like in the next 3 years in terms of like balancing whatever work I will do plus the studies. In terms of, obviously I've been 3 years now living in London, and adapting to the culture is not exactly something new, but it's something that I'm continuously having to do day by day, like at my work, when meeting people. Like, I have this constant feeling of like being an outsider, but at the same time feeling blessed that I am different and that I have been accepted in this doctorate program, which we are actually only 3 internationals in the program. So it's me and 2 other girls. I think one is from Singapore and the other from India, and then the rest are all UK locals, nationals, and in total 19. So yeah, it's unbelievable, you guys. So I am like, I cannot believe that this is happening. There has been times throughout the past 2.5 years since I moved to London that I was just thinking, this might not happen for me in at least 3 to 4 years. Doing the conversion masters was definitely challenging, but that was just literally the beginning of the journey. Like, now it's like the second beginning of this 3-year course, and you get to be with me on this journey as well. But in terms of this video, I just want to keep it very like practical for anyone who is wondering like how to get onto a doctorate like this, or is maybe thinking like, what is this route of educational child psychology? How do you become an EP in London? And exactly how would that look like in terms of, again, being an international student? And disclaimer, like I've been saying in other videos, I don't have all the answers. I definitely do not. I am beyond grateful to have been accepted, but I'm still sorting things. I'm still sorting out things about student loans. I'm still sorting out things in terms of my current job, like what will I do? Will I quit? Will I stay part-time? So many questions, but at the same time, fun to have these problems, because I'm not kidding. I was meaning to get into this doctorate ever since 2021. I still have that video of myself recording me, because I always do that to like keep myself motivated, and perhaps that's why I also created this YouTube channel. And that video was like saying like, hey Majo, you are going to be the best child psychologist there is, like the best Peruvian child psychologist in the UK there is, and you got this, we're gonna get into our uni. And that was just so cute, because I saw that and I was like looking at myself in the video and saying to that girl, to that Majo, like, we actually did it. Like, we are now entering onto that that 3-year program. Of course, we haven't done it yet, but we are actually gonna go through it. However that might look in terms of things that I need to sort out, that is just secondary, to be honest. Like, the most important thing is that I am actually doing what I love. I will be doing what I love. And I don't know if I've shared this before, but my dream after the doctorate is, of course, working for a local authority, but to actually be able to open my private practice in educational and child psychology, and to have families and children come to me for better understanding their child, assessing them, supporting them in their needs. So I already see myself doing all of those things. I have created vision boards about it. I journal a lot about my future self as well. and maybe subconsciously all of these things are already sort of happening because I was already thinking that they will eventually, and this year it's the start. So okay, enough of that rambling. I'm just gonna start with my background. So my background is, like I said, I come from Peru, South America, Latin America. Spanish is my mother tongue. I came in 2022. Basically, the work experience that I had before enrolling on this doctorate was working in HR for 3 years, then working 1 year as a teaching assistant while studying my master's. And after that, I worked for a non-for-profit with children and adolescents with complex barriers and as an employment advisor. And then after that, I am working in my current role in higher education, where I work in the careers and employability team. And in the midst of this, I have also volunteered. So I have been like a volunteer mentor for a girl in a secondary school. And what else have I done? I think I have done maybe one more volunteering in the midst of all of this in terms of work experience. But the age brackets with whom I've worked with in these roles have been, well, the nursery, obviously children 3 to 5, then the not-for-profit, I've worked with adolescents at first, so like between 16 and 25, and then with adults, so the average age was like 35 to 40. And then in my current role, I'm actually working with mature students. So as you can see, there's like a combination of different age brackets, so just so you guys get an idea of my experience. But bear in mind that you don't have to have the exact experience as me. Of course, everyone is unique, and I can only talk for this program, this doctorate in child and educational psychology that I applied to. They definitely do not look for just like a one-size-fits-all type of experience. So there is definitely a role in my niche, in my sector, called Assistant Educational Psychologist, or AEP, which, yes, definitely boosts your CV and definitely gives you a sense of the work that an EP actually does, because you work in an educational psychology service. But you don't have to have this role in order to get to the doctorate. I haven't had it. I remember applying to loads of these assistant educational psychologist roles, and I didn't get it, and I still got into the doctorate. And a lot of the classmates that I met on the welcome day the other week, some of them had this assistant educational psychologist experience, but others were just teaching assistants or learning support assistants before, or behavioral aides, or support workers, or mental health support workers. So there were like a mix of experiences between mental health settings, the charity sector or non-for-profits, and the education sector. Also, this type of career, educational psychology, it's very common for teachers, like qualified teachers, primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, or even nursery, to then apply to the program after being a teacher for some years. Actually, like many years ago, I don't remember exactly how many, the only way of getting into educational psychology was through being first a teacher and then applying to this program. But that has changed. Obviously, you don't need to be a teacher first and then apply to be an educational psychologist anymore. So they have removed that, at least in the UK. So that in terms of work experience, volunteering, paid roles, etc. Now I'm going to go to qualifications. So in short, I've studied a conversion degree in psychology, an MSc conversion in psychology, accredited by the BPS. And the reason I did that was because my bachelor's was not in psychology, it was in business, and it was back home. So in terms of qualifications, you do need a degree in psychology, whether that's a bachelor's or a conversion master's, that is accredited by the BPS in order to be able to apply to this doctorate in educational and child psychology. So now on to the application process. Okay, so I can only talk for the application process of this single uni that I apply. So I only applied to one. If you're considering doing this type of doctorate or other doctorate, I would highly suggest you apply to 2 or 3. I guess the reason I did that was, well, also because this course is only offered in around like 14 universities across the whole UK. And one of them was like very good, which is the one that I got in child psychology, which is University of East London. So I just thought, okay, let's just give it a go. If they say no, let's just apply to either that same uni or other unis in the next academic year. But then they say yes, so good. In terms of what they asked me, so when I first applied, of course, CV, they asked me for my graduate membership, my GVC, basically, which is, like I was saying, right, like the conventional master's accredited by the BPS or bachelor's accredited by the BPS. So they ask like that you are also registered with the BPS, so I had to pay a fee. I don't remember the amount, but they asked like the proof of that. And they also asked me for a short essay or a short like summary of what will my dissertation entail or be. So I am passionate about specifically working with special educational needs children and young people, and how to handle anxiety and big emotions amongst them. So I was talking about that in my essay. I was talking about how I would structure that. So my advice for that is pick your niche already in that sector. Educational psychology is sort of like a sector already, but it's still broad. Like, what is it in educational psychology that you would like to be an expert in? And I chose like anxiety, how to handle anxiety in children and young people with special educational needs, specifically autism and ADHD. So I talked about that, and it was easy for me to like sort of talked about it on the essay, doing a bit of research, because it was like just a one page, because I was already reading about those topics. So my second advice would be like, be curious. Like, okay, maybe you're not in the program yet, or maybe you don't know if you like this type of sector, but so then be curious, just search the internet, buy a book. I'm reading right now one called Dopamine Nation. It's really interesting. I've already finished one about the anxious generation. So I'm constantly like trying to get information about my sector, my niche, working with children, even way before thinking even about applying to the doctorate. I was already curious, in other words. So that's in terms of the main documents that they ask you, if I remember correctly, like CV, like personal statement / essay / like what are you going to be talking about in your dissertation, and then proof of your GVC in terms of like, are you actually eligible academically to apply for this doctorate, yes or no, and then submitting proof of that. I was almost forgetting, besides you know, CV, research proposal, and evidence of chartered membership from the BPS, is the 2 references, one being from your employer, current employer ideally, and the other one being from the academic, like ideally, like for example your supervisor from your master's or your bachelor's in psychology. And what happened to me was that, okay, I asked my current manager to do my reference. Perfect. I explained this is like my dream, so can you do a reference, etc. That was okay. And then my supervisor for my master's was actually not in London anymore. So when I emailed, it popped back and it said like, no, that email is like deactivated. So I stalked her on LinkedIn, and I saw she was in Australia, and I saw she was like, I saw the name of the university she was in. So I googled the university, I saw the domain of the email, and I figured it might be like the first letter of her name plus the last name at the domain of that university. And I just crossed my fingers to see if it worked. And I sent her an email saying, hi, Marie, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm applying. And then it worked. She replied, it was the correct email address. And then, yeah, anyway, that was a short story of how it was a bit challenging for me to find my supervisor or locate her at first, but then I managed. So yeah, and that's it. In terms of documents, that's basically all that they asked me. Bear in mind, other unis might have additional documents, other unis might have less documents. Huge advice, apply to at least 2. Or just 1 and see how it goes. So in terms of timelines now, so I applied in February this year, so February 2025. And then I remember that in March, I would say end, they said to me like, your reference needs to be stamped. I was like, oh, okay. So I told my employer like she needs to stamp it with like the logo of the company, so sort of make it a bit more like formal or professional. I would say that was the only issue in terms of the documents that they were asking me for the applications, which I'm going to put here again. So after that, after the back and forth of the stamp in the reference and then the evidence of GVC, I recall that they also said to me like, you haven't uploaded it. I was like, yeah, I have uploaded it. So it was a lot of back and forth over the phone. I remember that during March, April, until finally it was all done in terms of sending out all the documents and amending those who needed to be amended. Then April, end of April, it was when they shortlisted me, and I think it was mid-April or end of April, I don't recall, but then they sent me an email saying that you've been shortlisted, and I'm like, oh, this is insane. So yeah, I was like, okay, let's prepare for this interview. And by preparing for the interview, I mean, of course, reading the whole handbook, yes. And it was sort of like, of course, a handbook, right? Like what you're gonna learn throughout this course, this program, this doctorate. So I remember reading it very carefully and thinking, okay, what could they ask me in the interview in terms of like the handbook? Why, obviously, why do I want to pursue this career? Definitely a big must, and definitely something that they asked me. And then I remember also watching like videos of other educational psychologists and how their application process was. There aren't many, to be honest. I haven't found a lot of educational psychologists on YouTube. I think I follow like maybe 2 or 3. But then there's LinkedIn, right? And in LinkedIn, I have actually networked even like 2 years ago. I remember messaging randomly like 30 EPs in London. I filtered that and I messaged them all saying like, hi, I'm really looking forward to like becoming an educational psychologist like yourself. Would it be possible to have a chat over Zoom at any point? Like I will adapt to your agenda, of course. And yeah, like 3 of them replied saying like, yes, of course. Like I remember 1 or 2 also replied saying like, I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm not like, I don't have time to go over Zoom, but you can send me your questions, which I was happy to do. But then there were also some that actually went on a Zoom call with me. So those I remember contacting again and saying like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I actually have been shortlisted and I would really appreciate if maybe we could have like a short Zoom chat. Only 1 replied and we briefly spoke through the phone, and yeah, he basically sort of helped me in terms of like typical questions and just be myself and show my genuine passion, and of course the work experience, like highlight how is that relevant for the program. So yeah, they told me that, and after reading the handbook, I practiced mock interview questions. Like I was saying, like, why do you want this program? Why do you think your work experience is aligned? What would you like to do after that? In terms of applying psychology in your work experience, how has that looked like for you? So I practiced all these mock interview questions, did a short PowerPoint presentation, practiced it. I remember practicing with my colleague as well, and then I was like, okay, I feel ready. But also it wasn't because I was feeling ready because I practiced in mock interview and then did my PowerPoint. I was feeling ready because I knew sort of deep inside that I was meant for this, and whatever happened, even if they said no, I was like, okay, maybe this wasn't my year. Like I was feeling definitely, of course, nervous. I was like, let's see how this interview goes. But at the same time, like inside subconsciously, I was like, yeah, but I'm also calm because this is my thing. Like I've worked hard for this. Like I've done my due diligence. Yes, a part of me will always sort of feel like an imposter, or like, who do I think I am in order to think that I could be like, you know, accepted, and even like the dream of opening my practice. There's always that tiny voice inside everyone, I would say. But in this point in my journey, as I was saying, 2.5 years later after coming, that voice is just getting smaller and smaller. And now I feel way more confident than before. Not because of the outcomes, not because of the results. Those are just consequences. I feel more confident because it comes natural to me to read about these topics of educational child psychology. It's the opposite of forced. Like, I genuinely enjoy it. So I guess that's why the confidence comes from. Like, because I enjoy it, I take my time to do it better. And because I take my time to do it better, I become more competent. And because I'm more competent, I feel more confident. I don't know if that makes sense. So anyway, the interview was divided in 3 parts. Okay, let's talk about that. So the first part was a group interview. And I knew all of this through the email. So in the email, they explained to me, okay, it's going to be divided like this. The group interview was, of course, with other candidates, and that's where they will assess us, like, how do we interact with others? Do we allow others to participate, or do we take over and do it all? Or the opposite, like, do we don't say anything? Are we shy? Like, are we like on mute, for example, all the time? So of course I try to, of course, open my mic all the time and ask questions to these other candidates, right? I remember one girl was actually an assistant educational psychologist, like working for a council, working with EPs, etc. And at some point I was like, okay, yeah, definitely she has a very much aligned more experience than I do at the moment working in careers. However, I still have other experiences before doing this role. So I interacted with her, being curious about like what is it that she finds useful when assessing children in the local authorities, and how does that look like for her particular council. And also I remember asking questions to the other candidates, like, hey, and what do you think about this? And then obviously talking about a bit of my experience, like, I actually find that very useful in the nursery that I was working with the children. I also find useful like making observations and making sure that every child was feeling included. So in short, I was just trying to say a sentence or two about like my work experience, my work history, and how is that aligned to the career of an educational psychologist, whilst trying to make sure that the whole group participates. I think there was a girl that wasn't very talkative, and I remember asking her like, and hey, what do you think about that? Like, what has been your experience? And everyone was super nice, to be honest. We were like 5 candidates in that group interview, and everyone was super nice. After that, there was a written assignment. So that's the part 2. That part actually made me so nervous, because it was with an open camera. Obviously, all of this was with an open camera. We had to, well, obviously in a Word document, write, obviously not using anything else than just like our brains and our hands to type. What I'm saying is obviously not AI, not even Google, nothing. So just me, myself, and I with a Word blank document. So what they told us to write about, it was something along the lines of like a topic inside educational psychology that you think is very important, and how would you approach it. So of course I'm sort of changing the words, because yeah, obviously they also change the questions a lot, so it's not like you're getting the same question, but just so you get an idea about the written assignment. So again, exactly like at the beginning when I submitted my documents and they asked me for the research proposal, I talk about the topic that interests me the most, which is handling anxiety in children, young people with special educational needs, and how social and emotional learning, or the understanding of one's emotions, is crucial for building positive relationships, for even improvements in behavior, for responsible decision making. So all of these things, they weren't memorized. Well, maybe some of them like sort of stuck in my head, like memorized, but others were like, okay, I didn't exactly remember. I remember I wanted to mention what are the 5 core competencies of SEL according to CASL, which is the Collaborative Association for Social and Emotional Learning. By the way, if you haven't already, the other day I created a channel and a TikTok account based on just like parenting tips, like social emotional learning tips, and give it a follow if you haven't, and if you find it useful. And it's just me, to be honest, talking about these things, and hopefully with time it will be a bit more pro, just as this channel, which is slowly growing as well. So anyway, I talked about that. in my written assignment. I talked about SEL. I talked about how it's so important that teachers and staff members are trained and informed into how to help the students understand themselves, understand their emotions, and also not just focusing on the academic performance or the academic success, but rather the soft skills and how it's especially hard for those with SEN or special educational needs, because obviously they need that one-to-one support, and sometimes they don't have the capacity of offering that one-to-one support. So I talked about like the challenges of that in our current settings and how the work of an educational psychologist is so crucial for bridging that gap and to making sure that the right support is in place, especially for those with special educational needs. So yeah, as you can see, I could talk about this for hours, and I haven't even been qualified yet. So yeah, the pre-qualified life, especially in a career in psychology, it's very hard. Like the job market, like sometimes you're in a role where you're not necessarily applying psychology, and me in a careers team. But that doesn't mean that you cannot still be curious and read and reach out on LinkedIn and just like continuously learn about your niche, about your topic. And then when the time comes, like my time has come, then you will ideally enroll on a professional doctorate, or even if you don't want to, and even if you just want to, you know, be an expert in this topic and maybe like offer a service that obviously wouldn't be called educational psychology, but maybe it can be called, I don't know, like emotional learning specialist, and then just be known because of that, and go and do it. That no one is stopping you from doing that. However, on another note, educational psychologists are actually a protected title. So in the UK, a person cannot be called an educational psychologist if they haven't been accredited by the HCPC. Which, if you're more curious about these regulations and this route to becoming an EP and what do you need, etc., then you can watch my video on how to become an educational psychologist. Okay, so in terms of the one-to-one interview, right? We had the group interview, the written assignment, and finally the one-to-one interview. Of course, I'm not allowed to disclose the exact questions that they asked me in my interview, and even if I would, those questions change, you guys. So even if I would tell you the questions, they will probably change. But what I can tell you, it's general advice and how I would prepare for this one-to-one interview. So I think I already said it, but your why is one of the most important things, I would say, not just for the one-to-one interview, but rather like in general, like the whole application process, and even the fact that you're even like thinking of doing this in the first place. So think about your why, like why educational and child psychology and not clinical, and not counseling psychology, or no psychotherapy. In other words, make sure that you know exactly what the role of an educational psychologist is and why is that so appealing to you. Does that make sense? So make sure that you've done your research about what are the main responsibilities of an EP, like who do they work with, usually in what settings, and how do they add value, how they are like literally the bridge between, you know, parents and understanding their children, and also teachers and understanding their children, and how do they assess, how does that look like. Obviously you don't need to be an expert, you're going to study in order to like be the expert and be an EP, right? But they still want to make sure that you're not just enrolling in these 3 years of studying something that you don't actually even understand, either what it is and either why is it that you want it. And also something that maybe I already said, but like research subtopics in educational psychology that you're very like passionate and interested in, like if it's autism, if it's ADHD, assessments, anxiety, handling big emotions, like those sort of things are the sort of things that I'm interested, for example. But for you, it could be something slightly different. I don't know, just be curious, reach out, LinkedIn, and don't be afraid of talking to strangers, to be honest, especially on these early stage careers, and not just in early stage. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm thinking in every stage of your career, it's crucial to know how to network with the right people, coming from an authentic place, coming from a win-win situation, not just like yes, hi, hire me, hi, what are you doing, I want to be like you. Actually, that's a bit flattering. If you ask me, if someone would message me saying that, I would be, oh, that's flattering, of course I would help you. What I'm saying, just yes, network, yes, LinkedIn, but don't forget to always like show up authentically, even when networking. No, dismiss that. Show up authentically, especially when networking. So yeah, I just changed that. So yeah, that was the whole application process. I just prayed for whatever results they would give me. And then after like, I think 2 or 3 weeks, it was just 2 weeks ago that they sent me the outcome, that I literally cried when I saw that email that they accepted me. So yeah, that was the whole application process. I'm just in the start of my journey. I don't know all the answers, guys. No, this is not a funded place. International students can get some partial scholarships and do get some like discounts for paying fees early, but not much more than that, unfortunately. And probably I will talk about that in like future videos, or how did I ended up like paying the entirety of my fees, self-funding it. Like, I'm not receiving help from family or anything. I'm asking for a loan basically to be able to pursue this dream. So tag along for how will that look like. But like I said, it's all because I'm confident that this is what I want. I don't have to do this. I am choosing to take this journey. I am choosing to sort of taking these challenges of international route, sort of the outsider. And not just that, but like the actual fees are like way bigger, and locals get a funding, usually a bursary as well, whereas internationals don't. But I'm choosing that, if that makes sense. Anyway, it sounded better in my head somehow, but I hope this video was useful for locals or international students thinking about pursuing a career in educational psychology, or in general. How does this application might look like for you? It might look different, but hopefully this inspires you to sort of have an idea of what it looked like for me. And if you're interested to see more of my journey as a future doctoral student as well, then tag along. And if you haven't already, feel free to as well follow me on my Instagram, which is the same name as the YouTube, My Psych Journey Abroad. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.